How did Native Americans arrive in North America? We know when Columbus came here in 1492, he didn't find empty continents. Experts believe there may have been as many as 10 million Native Americans living all over North America, Central America, and South America. Well, how did they get here in the first place? We believe human life began here in Mesopotamia. You see the yellow arrow pointing to the Fertile Crescent. You may remember learning about the Fertile Crescent at some earlier point in school, where we believe human life began. But how did people get from here the whole way over to here? That's the subject of this discussion for the next few minutes. How did people move from Mesopotamia to the Americas? There are a number of different theories about how this happened. We know what we know about the past by the stories people tell, by the documents they have left behind, and by the artifacts. Well, there are no stories because there's no one alive now who first migrated to North America. There are no documents. Probably whoever first arrived here in North America didn't even have a written language. So we have to rely on the artifacts for our sources of knowledge, and artifacts are sometimes misinterpreted or just don't exist. So using artifacts, these are our best theories about how people got to North America. The first of those is called the Bering Strait theory, which says people began in Mesopotamia and migrated east, slowly but surely, following herds or for whatever reason, moving across China and Russia, across the Bering Strait, which now lies between Russia and the US, and coming into Alaska, down into Canada, and into what's now the United States, Mexico, Central and South America. This theory seems to work because the people who, the Native Americans here, are more of Asian background than anything else, and they seem to have migrated to these warmer areas where the more advanced Native American civilizations existed. Maybe they arrived here on our east coast a little later because the civilizations here are not as well developed as the Aztecs, Incas, and Mayas down here. So that's the Bering Strait theory, that people crossed this land bridge between Russia and Alaska, which is now known as the Bering Strait. Problem with this theory is it would have taken a long, long time for all that to happen. And some people say it's just not long enough. People have not lived here in North America, especially, long enough to have made this possible. The second theory is called the South Pacific theory. Again, we're starting with human life here in the Fertile Crescent. Instead of people migrating north this way to go towards the east where it's really cold, wouldn't it make more sense if they migrated south and were in warm places, moving their way across the islands in the South Pacific, island hopping eventually from Hawaii to Mexico? This seems to make more sense weather-wise because most people would be more likely to travel where it's warm. It also seems to make sense to explain why these civilizations, the Aztecs, Incas, and Mayas in particular, were more developed and more complex societies than those up here in North America or even those down here. Seems like they might have been in this area longer. Problem with this theory is that jump from Hawaii over to Mexico would have had to be an awfully long trip by boat with people who could not possibly have done it on purpose. They couldn't have stored up food, created boats that would have gotten them intentionally from Hawaii to Mexico because the distance is just too great. It would have had to have been an accident, and kind of an unlikely accident at that. Here's our third theory, called the Pangaea theory. This theory says that at one time all the continents of the earth were connected into one supercontinent called Pangaea. People started life at least in one location, maybe in conditions sort of like our Mesopotamia, and from there began to branch out to other areas. Once the supercontinent of Pangaea was populated, then the continents broke apart. Some reasons why this theory may work: it does look like all the continents could possibly have fit together at one point, and we do know that continents drift. They move slowly every year. They're on very large plates, tectonic plates, that do move apart from each other every year. So maybe this theory is correct. The difficulty with this theory, again, is would Would there have been a big event that broke all the continents up quickly, or did they just drift slowly apart over time? Well, it's very difficult to say. There is a fourth theory called the North Atlantic theory. Again, people started here in the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia, and from there migrated across Europe to the west, eventually to Greenland, Denmark, and then down into Canada and the United States. This would be a much shorter trip. It would not need as much time as the previous theories. And we know the Vikings did that, at least, from Norway to Greenland and down into North America, long before Columbus did. The problem with this theory is when Columbus arrived down here, in this area, he did not find people of white European background. Our Native Americans are more of Asian background. A fifth theory is one we'll just call from Africa to South America. Life began here in the Fertile Crescent, and we believe people, according to this theory, may have migrated across Africa, and from Africa made the jump across to Brazil. This distance is not nearly as great as the South Pacific theory distance. The South Pacific theory says people might have gone from Hawaii to Mexico. That would be very, very difficult. This would still be difficult, but at least might have been possible if a hurricane or some large storm had blown people in boats across to Brazil. But again, the trouble with this theory is that when Columbus arrived here in our North America, Central America, he did not find people of African descent. The Native Americans are of Asian descent. This theory is called the Lost Continent of Atlantis theory. The idea is that maybe there was a continent out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean at one time. And according to this theory, people migrated from the Fertile Crescent to this big continent called Atlantis, and from there made it to North America. That makes sense in a way. Down under the Atlantic Ocean, there do appear to be mountains, or maybe the leftover scraps of a continent. The trouble with this theory is those underground mountains and scraps of what may be a continent do not show any signs of human life. And also, a lot of the issue is these North American Indian civilizations were not as well developed as in Central America, so it's unlikely these people arrived first here. Well, those are some theories about how people got to North America. Once the tribes got here to North America, why did they continue migrating? Well, we know in North America there are a number of different cultures, Indian cultures. We're accustomed to the Northeast Woodlands Indians, but there are others like the Seminoles in the Southeast, the Aztecs here in Mesoamerica, a lot of the Plains Indians like the Sioux and others. And they're just different different culture areas. This is what we're going to do with an activity right now. You are going to learn why those tribes migrated. In the following activity, you will be a tribal leader along with a couple other people. You're going to use some real-life situations to decide whether you want to settle where you are or to migrate to somewhere else. And the whole idea here is that you will be learning reasons why the tribes migrated. One person will be the chief of the tribe. You're the boss. Your decisions are final. But you respect the opinions of the other leaders, including the assistant chief. The assistant chief is the second in command and is planning to be the chief someday. And all the North American tribes had a shaman or a medicine man. You're the tribe's spiritual leader. The political leaders don't have to listen to your advice, but they often did. They often took the shaman or medicine man's advice very seriously. So if the shaman or medicine man suggests something, well, the chief and the assistant chief wouldn't want to reject that advice lightly. So today's simulation, you are going to react to 8 different issues or problems faced by the early Native American tribes. Your goal is to start with 200 tribe members and to keep as many of these people alive as possible with your good decision making. Good luck.